Hey guys, I'm Jared, and as you can see, I like bikes. I like bikes so much I dream about bikes. But one thing that gives me a nightmare is having wet pants from a soggy seat. So, I decided to do something about it. Figured I'd try my hand at some carbon fiber and build my own seat, which can't get wet. And I'm going to walk you guys through exactly how I did it.
I started by designing a 3D CAD model so that I could visualize my design and have a template to work from. The design includes a hard shell which won't soak up with water and rubber mounts to make up for comfort. I started with an existing saddle that I already had and covered it in a thick layer of Bondo and diligently shaped it into this wonderful product you see here. After several layers of mold release, a thick gel coat layer was applied, followed by fiberglass to give my mold some structural integrity. To make the cylinders for the seat rails which fit underneath the seat, I first started with the socket and the vise. It happened to be the right size, and I prepped it by applying wax and PVA, and then made the epoxy and wrapped the carbon fiber around the socket. This was then covered with a thin sheet of plastic just to keep the bindings tight so that the carbon fiber didn't unwind, and allowed to cure. I prepped my saddle mold with several layers of mold release wax again, followed by a thick layer of epoxy which was allowed to set up into a tacky state. Then the first layer of carbon fiber was applied. A lot of care has to be taken in the first layer because this is the visual layer when you pull the part out of the mold. And I had to do some relief cuts to allow for the weave to mesh into the contours of the mold. This is followed by several subsequent layers. I ended up doing 6 in total. Each layer you apply a little bit more epoxy and push the epoxy through the weave to impregnate every layer. Once all the layers were placed, I did a quick trim, followed by a peel ply sheet and paper towels to soak up excess epoxy. I placed the entire assembly in a regular old space bag, and boom goes the dynamite. The next day was like Christmas morning when I pulled this bad boy out of the bag, and it actually came out pretty well. I had to do a little bit of coercing to get the mold off, but it didn't come off with too much trouble. Since there was a fair bit of trimming to do, I opted to use a bench grinder to do the bulk of the work for me. To make the front mount, I applied a little bit more epoxy, set down my thread nut, and applied more carbon fiber layers over the top of this to keep it in place. The rear cylinders were attached in a similar fashion. The saddle was then sanded, and a final coat of epoxy was applied over the top to fill up any voids. If my seat were to go into mass production, a more sturdy and precise mold would be necessary that could handle repeated cycles. Also, a better vacuum bagging process would need to be employed. My space bag worked pretty well for prototyping, but it didn't hold the vacuum as well as I would have liked, and I got some voids in my final product. The other point would be the mounts for the rear and the front should really be pre-molded sub-assemblies which are then fixed to the seat. After some extensive product testing, no soggy seat, no says I, and she rides like a dream.
Well, there you have it, guys. No need to fret the weather when you can do it yourself.